Hi, my name's James Odera, and I will be sharing a story, my story in particular, named A Lost Boy. Now, this story is hard to pinpoint where it begins. I think today we'll start it on the playground, but if I were to tell it tomorrow, it could have a different starting place. But for now, the playground. I'm playing tag on the jungle gym with all of my friends after school, my mom watching on the bench, mindlessly watching me run around the park as we waste time until my sister finishes. She's a couple grades younger at the time. As we're running around playing tag, me and my friends, we take a minute to pause, catch our breath, and my friend comes out to me and she says, "James, who is that on the bench?" And I look over as she gestures towards my mother, and I say, "Well, that's my mom." And she says, "What do you mean that's your mom?" And as a kid, what do you mean that's your mom isn't a very straightforward question. I didn't understand what she meant. I say, "That's my mom." Maybe she didn't hear me. She looks over towards my mother. She looks over towards myself. And she says, "But she doesn't look like you." And I did not mention that my mother is white and my father is black. And at the time, it was just my mom who was at the park with me. And I look at my mom and I look at myself. And I think to myself, well, I don't look like my mom, but does any kid really look like their parent? Does any child really look like an adult? I didn't really know what to say to my friend. She looks over towards my mother again. She looks back to me and she says, "Are you adopted?" I remember abruptly ending that conversation, going over to my mom and sharing the chat I just had with my friend. We didn't really have too deep of a conversation. Perhaps I don't remember it. Perhaps my childhood brain was unwilling to have a deep conversation. Who knows? But what I do remember is how I felt. I felt like someone pointed towards my family and said, "You don't look like your family. You shouldn't look like them. Maybe you just simply don't." But my mother that day was not my mother. And that was one of the first instances that I was abruptly shown what racial differences can create in a brain, in that there was a gap between me and my mother based on the way that we looked. And I didn't know how to reconcile this feeling. All I saw in myself was my mom's son. And I'm sure my mom only saw and still sees her son. But I found that, how should I word this, suggestion that I was adopted? Almost an advisory, "Are you sure you're her son? You might be adopted." I found that that conversation was uncomfortable. It was new. It was odd to me because I haven't had these conversations before. I didn't need to because my family was my family. I was me. My mom was my mom. But today, my mom was white and I was black. Of course, this wasn't the only instance around that time that I experienced it, but it was maybe one of the more prevalent ones at the time, because I remember it still to this day. I remember the discomfort, and it seems to have been one of the earlier dominoes that fell over, slowly creating the picture of what racial differences means in Canada. I found myself in the following years maybe coloring a picture, drawing my family in grade 4, drawing myself, black, with my brown color of skin, my siblings, same color, my father in the picture, the same color, and then I get to my mom. Another instance, I'm black and she is white, not simply she is my mom and I am her son. And I find myself coloring her skin in the same shade of brown that I colored everyone else. Of course, when I take it home, there was confusion. I don't believe any feelings were hurt, but it was a moment of me trying to once again reconcile the fact that there were observable differences between me and my mother, between me and others, and I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't understand it, but I knew it was there. Over time, following those elementary years, I started to grow a large afro. And what I found this fro did for me is it created a sense of blackness. And what this was another domino of, or what this early domino can symbolize is me trying to play the part. I discovered that there are differences. Now, how do I play the part? How do I play that different person compared to that person? How do I be black? You grow a fro, and I grew a pretty gnarly one. It was pretty good. I started to buy different pairs of sneakers. I started to emulate what I saw my black classmates wear. I started to change what music I listened to, what sports I watched, maybe a little bit more basketball. I don't need to watch hockey. But trying to attach to these stereotypes, these characteristics that perhaps got called out, perhaps I imagined myself, perhaps were created as a whole in popular media, and I tried to internalize them to create a blackness for myself and hopefully to create a blackness for those who see me, because now in junior high I wasn't just a different color, but I am a different person. I should be acting this way. I'm called words I've never heard before. I'm asked, why aren't you on the basketball team? And I say, I don't know. I have asthma. I mean, I did, and I do, but that was an excuse at my heart. And I started to wonder, why am I not on the basketball team? And this anxiety started to fill me about who I was, who I should be, who I'm not. And of course, I found friends. I found enemies, as it were. But I also found that my identity was being split into two. There's me, James, as I see myself, or as I saw myself. And there's the black kid that everyone else expected me to be. Eventually, those expectations crumbled in on myself, and I thought, why am I failing these expectations? Why am I failing to be who I am supposed to be? Of course, there's the days where you forget who you're supposed to be and you are who you are. But there's no bigger wake-up call to the way that people see you than being yelled a racial slur as you walk down the hallway with your friends, minding your own business, walking to your next course or next class. There's no mistaking what the intention is or who they're talking to when you hear the N-word yelled across the hallway and you are the only black kid in sight. Again, the feeling of expectations. Am I expected to be this word that was yelled at me? Who was I in that moment, if not me? What did they see that caused them to yell that word? They didn't say, James, you're an idiot. They didn't say my name at all, but they gave me a title. It wasn't the first time I've interacted with that word. It's the first time I was given the label. It's the first time I was decided by someone else who I was in that moment, at least in my conscious awareness. And that event carried over, especially with the abruptness of being verbally accosted in the hallway, because I didn't know who that kid was on a personal level. But he seemed to know something about me. I didn't expect it from him, but I was meeting his expectations physically. I was black, and he had something to say about it. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. Time moves on. Those instances fall away. Junior high turns into high school. a small group of friends turns into a bigger group of friends. A basic foods class turns into a more experienced foods class. Experienced. But what I found is the feeling of expectations didn't go away. It's the same way you might be expected to get certain grades, expected to show up to work on time, expected to drive on the right side of the road. Was I expected to play basketball? Was I expected to be ready for racial slurs? I don't know. But I found my friends. And what I found was building is this slight resilience to the world around me. It didn't necessarily build a sense of who I am, and that sense of double, the sense of two parts of me, the real James, the authentic James as I saw it at the time, and the expected James, the black kid. They still battled inside what became a hardened shell, created to protect me from those experiences that gave me confusion and tension. But I persevered. Thankfully, I had a good social group around me. I had lovely friends, a caring family, and high school ended. Now here's where the story continues. I got into university, I go into general studies because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Over time, I find that I love sociology. I am interested, I'm curious, I'm encouraged by those around me. I'm encouraged by the differences that exist. I'm encouraged about why people think one way, why some people think another, why sometimes those two schools of thoughts can't mix, why sometimes they hold hands. And I started to create a base of knowledge. Now, I say that in a very vague way. Knowledge can represent many things. For me, in my life, this knowledge was most significant in terms of the knowledge of myself. I went to class. I succeeded in classes I cared about. I did all right in classes that I didn't care as much about. But what I was finding is I was finding things that James cared about, not the black kid, not the expectations of what I should care about, but me, what I felt was the authentic me. And I kept on pushing through. I doubled down on the things that I cared about. I found what I enjoyed. I followed that path. Eventually, I met some great people. I made some great friends in a great program. I had some professors reach out to me through our classroom setting and kind of give me a hand, saying, "This is good. Try to keep it up." And I did. And through my lovely interactions at MacEwan, I eventually became a member of the Black History Month committee last year. And this was such a great experience for me because what I found was a group of people that cared about the same things that I care about. I found a group of people that perhaps look the way that I do, look differently than I do, but we interacted on the same page. We interacted about these amazing, important events that we can initiate in our community. And there were no gaps in our communication because of the way we looked. What I found where there were two people that learned how to connect. It was the authentic James and it was the black kid. And what I became aware of as I continued my work with Black History Month, with MacEwan, with those around me, throughout my degree, is I had slowly over time been figuring out how to be James and how to be black. Of course, people will always see difference, and that is encouraged. The difference is there. The difference can be celebrated. The difference can be acknowledged. We can lift up difference. We can thrive on difference together. And that's what I had slowly learned to do, and I am still learning to do. Blackness in Canada is a unique phenomenon, as any characteristic is in all of the diverse and unique people that exist in the country. We must not be afraid to acknowledge that we are Black. I am Black. Celebrate who you are. And understand that the people who see you as something else aren't seeing you, but you are, and you can, and you will. The lost boy that started out at the beginning of the story on the playground found himself. It took some time. It took some time to figure out who James was, what Blackness was, where those two interconnect. It took some time to realize that I am my Blackness, and my Blackness is James. And celebrating that fact is important for everybody. No one should feel lost because of who they are. But we can learn to lead each other forward together, celebrate one another, enjoy one another. Spot the difference. That's okay. And it's okay to say, I love you for that difference. And I love you for everything else about you as well. Black History Month is a time to sit down and recognize the important events, the important people, the important Blackness that exists in Canada and around the world. It's a time to celebrate. It's a time to reflect. It's a time to talk to one another, interact, engage, learn, unlearn. Do what you can and engage the way that you are able. Learn how to celebrate Black History Month together. Listen to stories, watch stories, read stories. But more importantly, learn how to celebrate yourself and celebrate all of those around you.